For decades, financial instructors have been repeating a certain figure, and most individuals have heard it so many times that it has begun to lose its meaning. 3 to 6 months of expenses. Keep it liquid, keep it separate, do not touch it unless it is a genuine emergency. The advice is correct. The problem is that nobody ever explains how a person earning $40,000 a year is supposed to get there, especially when the month has a habit of consuming every dollar before the month is finished. $10,000 on a $40,000 salary sounds like a long journey, and it is, but it is also a journey with a very clear map. And the people who complete it are not the ones who found extra money they did not know they had. They are the ones who decided the destination was real and built a route to it before they started moving. This is that route. After tax, depending on where you live and your specific circumstances, you are likely taking home somewhere between $2,600 and $3,000 a month. For the purposes of this breakdown, use $2,800 as a working figure. That is the starting point. Everything else flows from there. The second thing to understand is that building a $10,000 emergency fund is not one decision. It is a sequence of smaller decisions made consistently over time in the same direction. The fund does not appear, it accumulates. And the accumulation only works if the system producing it is designed properly from the beginning. Before a single dollar goes toward the emergency fund, you need to know where your money is currently going. Not approximately. Not in broad categories. Exactly. Pull up your last 2 or 3 bank statements and go through every transaction. Assign each one to a category: housing, food, transport, subscriptions, clothing, entertainment, debt repayments, everything. This exercise is not comfortable. Most people find at least one category where the number is significantly higher than they expected. That is normal. That number is also the beginning of your emergency fund, because it shows you where the money is and gives you the first realistic view of where it can come from. On a $2,800 monthly take-home, a typical expense breakdown might look something like this: housing at around $900 to $1,000, food at $300 to $400, transport at $200 to $300, subscriptions and utilities at $100 to $200, personal spending, clothing, entertainment at $100 to $200, debt minimum payments at $200 to $300. When you add all of this up, you are often left with somewhere between $100 and $300 of genuine surplus at the end of the month, sometimes less, sometimes nothing. That surplus is not enough to build a $10,000 emergency fund in any reasonable time frame. On $100 a month, it would take over 8 years. On $300, it would take nearly 3 years. Neither of those timelines is acceptable when the purpose of the fund is to protect you from the next emergency, which is not going to wait 8 years to arrive. So the plan has 2 sides. The first side is increasing the surplus. The second side is protecting the surplus once it exists. On the expense side, the most effective single action most people on a $40,000 salary can take is to reduce or eliminate one significant recurring cost, not 10 small costs. One significant one. The subscription audit will reveal some easy wins: streaming services that are barely used, gym memberships that have not been accessed in months, apps that charge annually and are forgotten between renewals. Cutting these is worth doing. But the real money is in the larger categories. If your food spending is $350 a month, and you can bring it to $250 by reducing how often you buy food outside the home, that is $100 a month freed immediately. You significantly reduce the cost of your food by making your own at home. I personally make most of my food at home. I can just prepare food for an entire week, store it, and just warm it up when I need to eat. If your transport costs include a car payment and you are in a situation where public transport is viable, the difference between running a car and using public transport can be several $100s a month when insurance, fuel, and maintenance are included. If you have a subscription service tier that includes features you never use, downgrading saves money without changing your actual behavior in any noticeable way. The goal on the expense side is not to make your life miserable. It is to find $200 to $300 a month that is currently going somewhere you do not particularly value and redirect it towards something you do. An emergency fund is not a sacrifice. It is a purchase. You are buying financial stability, 1 month at a time. On the income side, the most direct path for someone earning $40,000 is to ask whether that number can be increased. A salary increase of 5 to 10% at your current employer is the equivalent of finding an additional $2,000 to $4,000 a year without adding a single working hour. Many people on this income level have not asked for a raise in 2 or 3 years, often because they assume the answer will be no. The assumption is frequently wrong. Prepare the case. Document your contributions. Research the market rate for your role. Have the conversation. We covered how you can increase your salary in a previous video, so be sure to check it out. A raise is not immediately available. A secondary income during this period does not need to be large to be meaningful. An additional $200 a month from a weekend skill, a delivery shift, or a freelance task adds up to $2,400 over the year. That is nearly a quarter of the target from what amounts to a few hours a week. Before we continue, take a second to like or subscribe. It is a simple action from you, but it helps tremendously. Once you have identified a realistic monthly surplus, and for most people working through this exercise, honestly, that number lands somewhere between $200 and $500. The next step is to make the emergency fund automatic. This is not optional. It is the most important structural decision in the entire plan. Manual saving does not work at scale. The money that sits in a current account waiting to be transferred to savings has a way of being absorbed by the month before the transfer happens. An automatic transfer, set to move on the same day your salary arrives, removes the decision entirely. The money leaves before you have a chance to spend it. The month adjusts around what remains. Open a separate savings account for the emergency fund, not the same account you use for daily spending, not an account linked to your debit card, a separate account, ideally at a different bank, that requires a deliberate action to access. The friction of accessing it is a feature, not a bug. It is the thing that stops the fund from being quietly depleted by expenses that feel like emergencies but are not. The target is $10,000. The timeline for most people on this income working through this exercise properly is somewhere between 18 and 30 months. On $250 a month, automated, you reach $10,000 in 40 months. On $350 a month, you reach it in just under 29 months. On $500 a month, combining expense reduction and modest additional income, you arrive in 20 months. None of these timelines require extraordinary income. They require an ordinary income deployed with a specific intention over a sustained period. There will be months where the plan does not work as intended. A bill arrives that was not expected. A cost increases. A month runs long before the salary arrives. This is not failure. This is what the plan is built to survive. When a difficult month happens, the response is to return to the plan in the following month, without treating the disruption as a reason to abandon the strategy. The emergency fund itself, once partially built, begins to absorb the smaller shocks that previously required a credit card or a personal loan. Every $100 in the fund is $100 of buffer between you and the next unplanned expense. The fund becomes more useful the larger it gets, which creates its own motivation to keep going. The question of where to keep the emergency fund matters more than most people realize. A standard savings account is better than nothing, but in an environment where high-yield savings accounts are available and accessible, there is no reason to accept a rate that barely keeps pace with inflation when a higher-yield option is available from a legitimate financial institution with the same deposit protections. The difference between a standard savings account at a fraction of a percent and a high-yield account at a more competitive rate on a $10,000 balance is not life-changing. But over 24 months of building toward the target, it represents several $100s of additional growth for no additional effort. When the fund reaches $10,000, something changes that is difficult to fully appreciate until it happens. Financial decisions stop being made from a position of scarcity. A car repair does not become a credit card balance. A medical bill does not become a month of financial stress. A gap between jobs becomes a managed transition rather than a crisis. The $10,000 does not make you wealthy. It makes you stable. And stability is the foundation that every other financial goal is built on. You cannot invest consistently when every unexpected expense empties your account. You cannot negotiate from a position of strength when you need the next paycheck to cover the gap. The emergency fund is not a goal in itself. It is the thing that makes every other goal more achievable. The $40,000 salary is not the obstacle. The absence of a system is the obstacle. Every person who has built a $10,000 emergency fund on an ordinary income did it the same way. They found the surplus, however small. They made it automatic. They protected it from the frictions of daily life by putting it somewhere slightly out of reach. And they stayed with the plan long enough for the accumulation to become visible, and the visibility to become its own motivation. The month you check the account and see $4,000 where there used to be nothing is the month the plan stops feeling abstract. The month you see $8,000 is the month you understand that 10 is not far away. And the day the balance reads 10,001 is the day the question changes from how do I build an emergency fund to what do I do with the financial stability I now have? That is a much better question to be asking. Check out our previous Kraftwise video on how to pay off $50,000 in debt in 3 years on an average salary. Because once the emergency fund is in place, clearing the debt that has been quietly costing you money every month is the next decision that changes everything.